Item number 2 on tonight's agenda is changes to the order of the agenda. My fellow council members, are there any changes? Any changes recommended by staff?
No, Madam Mayor.
Anyone from the public wishing to request a change at this time? Okay, next item this evening, two presentations. Actually, these are sort of my favorite fun things to do. We have 2 proclamations that I am very honored to present this evening to 2 individuals within our community receiving their Eagle Scout Awards. The first is a presentation of proclamation to John Joseph Welsh upon receiving his Eagle Scout Award for Boy Scout Troop 321. Is John here? Do you want to come on up, and I'll meet you down at the podium, and I'd love to have you tell us a couple of quick summary of what you've done to get your Eagle Scout Award. Here's our proclamation to you. Congratulations very much. I know a lot of hard work goes into this, so
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh. Basically, it's been kind of a culmination of being in the Boy Scouts for most of my life, ever since I was in middle school, and ended up with I did a service project at a church, the Church of the Epiphany, across the street from Burnham Park, and the garden there was really kind of drab-looking and dead and dry, and so I went and organized. We put in new sprinklers and amended the soil and planted gardens, so now it looks nice, I guess.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Next is a proclamation to Joseph Miller, and I understand that Joseph actually isn't able to join us this evening, unfortunately, but he's also receiving his Eagle Scout Award, Boy Scout Troop 149, and I believe his mom, Pam Miller, is here. Do you want to come up, and I'll hand you the proclamation, then maybe you can tell us what your son did for his Eagle Scout Award. Please pass along our congratulations to him.
Okay, thank you. Sorry my son can't be here tonight. He's going to school down in Cal Poly, so he wasn't able to come up. For his project, he refinished and stained several benches and picnic tables at Coyote Point Park. They were becoming very grayed, and so a lot of splinters, and so it made them much more beautiful. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, please pass along our congratulations. Item number 4 on tonight's agenda is the council communications and announcements. This is for brief items from our city council members regarding upcoming events or correspondence they have received. They're informational in nature, and no action will be taken on these items. Anything to report? Let me start with you, Don.
Yes, last meeting I reported that the Industrial Road project of undergrounding utilities was going to keep on moving. It is keeping on moving. However, what they may end up doing, depending on how things work, may change from what was earlier anticipated. Final clearance has been given or will be given by this coming Friday for about 99% of all the industrial parcels over there, where they have actually been converted to underground utilities. They believe, PG&E believes, that they're going to be holding off on actually pulling the wires and removing the poles until after the holidays, out of consideration for the merchants and the businesses who do a lot of good business down there, and they were certainly at a hardship during the construction, so they wanted to be extra considerate that way. It is anticipated that completion will come by mid to the end of January. The process is actually fairly quick. And if they do any work at all, it'll be like on a Sunday or something like that, where most businesses down there are not in business at all. So again, I want to pay compliments to our friends at PG&E for trying to work with us during this process. It's kind of a cumbersome and long-standing process, but they've done well.
Thank you, Don. Mike, anything to report?
Just a quick one. We all received the San Carlos sales tax report from HDL. And also, I think Richard's coming here. I mentioned to City Manager Mark Weiss that I think at possibly the next meeting that the non-recurring revenues that were outlined in your November 9th be made to public, that things are not as dreary as everyone has led them to believe. We don't have to do it now, but in the future, because I think it has bode well, not for anything that this council has done, but basically the economy's gotten better, sales tax is up, property taxes are up, fees are up, even with the ABAG rebate power, so that there's an additional $1.1 million sitting out there for the budgetary, although there still is a deficit of approximately $2 million. So maybe at the next meeting we can kind of, I know it's all doom and gloom, but I know the new council will make sure that they'll take full value for these changes. But seriously, I think it's not anything that this council does. It's a product of the economy and taking the right financial steps to anticipate those things. And I think this body has done it, and I think it's not tooting anybody's horn. It's just saying it's not as all doom and gloom as we think.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the new city manager, Mark Weiss, and I met, I guess it was just last week, and talked about the possibility of doing a financial overview again for the benefit of the new council as well as the benefit of the public in terms of kind of upcoming budgetary issues or good news, as you point out. So thanks.
Madam
for
Mayor,
that.
I think isn't this city financial report on the web anyway?
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah, I think we can call that because it does show this approximate 1.1 million over budget revenue.
Revenue-wise, yes. We're still, I think, looking at an overall deficit, though, so we'll come back at that in a couple of months. Tom, did you have something for us this evening? I'm sorry. Mike, were you finished? Okay.
A brief report from the Congestion Management and Air Quality Committee met last week, and there are two items I think the public will find of interest. One was a review of the criteria for implementing the ramp metering program in the county. And this, as you drive onto the freeway, you'll notice that there are lights that have been installed that are not yet working, which will regulate traffic going onto the freeway. Well, the Congestion Management Group recommended to CCAG a criteria for doing that, and before too long we'll probably see some metering go online. So as you approach the freeway, you'll understand there may be a brief wait until your place in line comes up. The other one is also interesting, I thought, and that was the recommendation funding support to interconnect and modify signals and controllers on El Camino Real, which would basically allow for signalization to be coordinated from Millbrae to Menlo Park. And those of you who travel on El Camino know that it's a bit of a challenge. Some signals seem to work well, and others don't seem to work at all. But when this project is completed, it will smooth that whole flow of traffic for an extensive amount of area through the county. That's the good news. The bad news is you have to wait until 2009 to see this done. So don't get too eager. But it is approved. It's a $10 million contract, a combination of county and state funding, and it will be nice to see it when it does come. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I actually just have two quick items. The first is wanted to mention, as many of you are aware, there is some slurry sealing going along through the streets of San Carlos, as well as some restriping. I noticed bicycle lanes going in or being laid out along Alameda de las Pulgas. So there's going to be a couple of changes. I know many of you do travel along Alameda, so just be aware of the construction workers, please, and drive a little bit more slowly as you start going through those areas, because they do get oily, and in the rainy weather, it takes a little while for the oil to come off. The second is, I just wanted, as many of you know, we did have an election last week. We have two new council members joining the council, as well as Matt Grocott, our vice mayor, actually having been reelected to this council. So please, if you are interested, come down to our next meeting, November 28th, and welcome the new council members to the City Council. In fact, I see Bob Grisilli sitting in the audience there, obviously chomping at the bit here, wanting to get up on the dais. So there is a seat available. However, you have to wait another couple of weeks there. No vote available, exactly. So again, that's going to be held at our next council meeting, so please feel free to come down and welcome our new council members. If there's no more reports to council, or no more council reports, I will turn over now to reports to council, which is city department heads. I would ask at this time, Bob Lanzone, do you want to, our city council, or city attorney, would you mind reporting on closed session?
Yes, Madam Mayor, the council met in closed session, and there is nothing pursuant to the Brown Act to report from closed session at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there other reports to council?
We have none.
Okay. Item 6 on our tonight's agenda is council appointments and presentation. Up for consideration this evening is reappointment of Jack Fisher and Jerry Cristioni to our Senior Citizens Advisory Board for their terms to expire, new terms, on October 13th, 2008. Was there any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, make a motion to reappoint Jack Fisher and Jerry Cristiani to the Senior Citizens Advisory Board.
I would second that, and also note to council that we should probably change the name of this to the Adult Community Center Advisory Board in the future, but that's another item.
Is that going to require some change to an ordinance, Bob?
I believe that this has been discussed, and Mr. Weiss will have some comments on that.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I know it's a little confusing. There will be no name change because while the name of the building is now the San Carlos Adult Community Center, the name of the council-appointed advisory board remains the Senior Citizens Advisory Board because we want them to advise on things beyond the building, dealing with all senior citizens in the community, so it will remain.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So there has been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Christine, would you like to call the question,
Sure.
please?
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Teagle Doherty?
Yes. And Matt Grocott, unfortunately, is not feeling well this evening, so will not be joining us. The other thing I wanted to bring up under council appointments and presentations is just a reminder to all of you watching from home that we do have applications out there for our Economic Development Advisory Commission. If you've always wanted to come and serve the city through a volunteer opportunity, now's your chance. Please contact Christine Boland. I figured I'd put a plug in here. Christine Boland, if you're interested in submitting an application. We will be reviewing those hopefully within the next month or so. Item number 7 this evening, public comment. This is a period of time, 10 minutes maximum at the beginning of the meeting, although we're kind of halfway into the meeting here, hopefully. For people who wish to address the City Council on items not on the posted agenda, each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes, and if there's more than 5 individuals, we may ask you to come back. I do have a speaker slip from Mike Galvin, our City Treasurer, and if there's others, please let me know. Mike, you want to come up to the pew or the?
Thank you. I was to speak on the Harvey Rose contract, and it pertains to a September 26, 2005 confidential communication sent to council. I appreciate I received one response from Mr. King. No one else has responded. Staff has talked with me early this evening, and we're going to have a meeting tomorrow. So I'll withhold any comment until after the meeting. So possibly I'll have a report next commission meeting on the Harvey Rose contract. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to address the council on an item not on the posted agenda? Okay, next item. Oh, I'm sorry. Feel free to come up. Please state your name and city of residence for the record, please.
My name is Tom Vance. I live at 425 Palomar Drive in Redwood, unincorporated Redwood City. And I had this article here which mentioned something about animal control for tonight. I don't see it on the agenda.
It is. It is actually under new business, item 9. So
okay.
If you,
has that already occurred? Or?
No, we haven't gotten there. We're just on
okay. All right.
item 7 at this time.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate you taking the time to ask the question. Anyone else from the public? Okay, item 8, which is approval of our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. I would like to note that we have been requested by staff to continue item 8E to our November 28th meeting, so that one is not under consideration for this evening's consent calendar. Is there anyone from council that would like to have any item removed?
Number F.
No matter.
Number F, same one I was going to pull. Okay, anyone from staff? No? Anyone from the public wishes to pull a separate item?
Madam Mayor, I move approval of consent calendar items A, B, C, D, G, H, and I.
And would you care to read item 8D,
Excuse
please?
me, and item D specifically being the adoption of ordinance number 1364, authorizing an amendment to the contract between the City Council and the City of San Carlos and the Board of Administration of the California Public Employees Retirement System with regard to 3% at 50 formula for safety officers.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Christine?
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Teagle Doherty?
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. Item 8F, Tom?
Yeah, I rather enjoyed reading through this. It's quite a piece of work, especially the assessment review of our current telecommunications condition. I had one question, noting that there are 3 options, and the 3 options, go from traditional to kind of state-of-the-art internet over or voice over internet technology. The question I have is, do we ask for bids on all 3, or do we make a selection of which one we want, and we put out the RFP for one of those options?
Well, I believe we're asking for bids on not all 3, but on a sort of a composite of the 3. Is that correct?
You have to come up to the microphone, I'm sorry. Otherwise, people won't hear you.
The RFP has been written so that vendors can make proposals on any option. The way it's written, the PBX option would not be proposed on, but the hybrid technology and the voice over IP technology are still open with the way we wrote the RFP by business requirements.
Connie, we all know you. Would you mind just identifying yourself for
Connie
the audience?
Dillard, IT manager for the City of San Carlos.
Thank you.
Do we have a preference, Connie? Does staff have a preference in terms of which one they really would like to see?
We know that the second option, as recommended by the vendor or by the consultant, hybrid IP solution, will be the solution that we get because of our current network and outside connectivity to our outlying sites.
So we're not, even though we might like the third option, it won't work for us because of the type of system that we're tying into?
Someday soon it will, when we get connectivity.
I guess my encouragement would be, and I've looked at that a little bit where I work, and it seems to be the state-of-the-art process. And I would think that if we're moving ahead into the next 5 or 10 or 15 years for telecommunications, we'd want to do the very best we can with the technology available and be able to adjust to it as we move forward.
The second option does not preclude us from going pure IP in the future.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's what I had.
Actually, to stay up there, I had a couple of questions. I noticed that, this started back in May 9th, and it's taken 6 months to get to this point. So obviously a lot of work has been put into this. I'm a little bit troubled by the budget impact where we had originally done a budget appropriation for $300,000 back in May, and the estimates are coming in at about $310,000 at this point. And the staff report also has this sort of additional item that says, oh, by the way, there's a couple of items not included in that number, which is already over budget. So when you come back to council with the numbers, it'll be total cost. It won't be sort of piecemeal cost. It will be total cost, including ongoing maintenance and maintenance expectations over the next 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so this will go out, and you have pre-selected vendors that, or pre-qualified vendors that this is going to go to, or is just general, anyone that wants to bid on it?
Yeah, there's just too much competition out there right now, so we're hoping to take advantage. So.
And just a further question, how are we advertising that this RFP is being released?
When you start preparing an RFP for the public bid process, all the vendors hear about it. So they've already started contacting us and asking us to be placed on our bidder list. So I've been collecting a large amount of vendors who are very interested in receiving our RFP, and I'll be sending that out to them that way. And then we will also advertise on our website and in the newspapers.
Okay, and then finally, when the bids come back, can you just very briefly talk about the process? Is there a committee review that's comprised? I noticed that the process to get to this point was actually using the business stakeholders here within City Hall. Is the evaluation process going to be the same before it comes back to council with a recommendation? Or is it lowest cost wins the bid?
No. We have hired a consultant to help us manage the evaluation project. The committee that has been working on the project up to this point will be working with that consultant. He will make recommendations. We'll all do our separate grading. We'll come back, make our final
recommendation
to you and
Yeah.
recommendation, and hopefully we'll get not only the lowest bid, but the best solution for our city.
Okay. I don't have any other questions or any comments. So, Tom, would you like to?
I move approval of item 9 on the consent calendar.
8F, I'm sorry. 8F?
I'm sorry, F, yes.
F, sure. 8F?
Whatever it
8F.
is. Whatever it is, 8F.
I will second it if it's 8F.
Okay, Christine.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Mayor Teagle Doherty?
Yes. Okay, moving on. New business this evening. The first item is a resolution authorizing the issuance of the City of San Carlos 2005 general obligation refunding bonds. This actually has to do with an original $8 million general obligation bond issued in 1996. And here to give staff report, a brief staff report, is Richard Averett, our finance director.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This item is to refund our 96 general obligation bond. We estimate at this time there will be approximately savings of just under $800,000. All these savings will be passed on to the taxpayer. There's no change in the maturity of the bonds. There is no money being pulled out for any other purpose other than to pass whatever savings are possible on to the taxpayer. Bill Ufrat is our financial advisor. He was selected through a competitive process or a request for proposals. We had 6 respondents looking for someone with experience in the municipal finance public issues field, and he was strongly recommended by neighboring cities as well. We have worked with him once before on the South Bayside Waste Management Authority original issue in 2000, and he is available in the audience if you have any questions.
Okay, are there questions for Richard or?
Just a clarification.
Okay.
The $800,000 for the balance of the term, or for the remaining term of the bonds?
That's correct.
And how long is that?
Approximately 20 years.
20 years. Okay, thank you.
And so basically what we're being asked to do tonight is to approve a resolution that allows you to refund those bonds primarily which were used for the construction of the library. And that
Correct.
really the only the benefit to the city is and to the citizens is a $800,000 savings over anticipated $800,000.
Right.
savings.
There's no benefit or cost to the city itself as an entity, but the only benefit is to the taxpayer.
Okay. Super. This isn't a public hearing, but if there are members of the public that wish to address the council on this item, please feel free to do so. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of questions here. And I did try to get most of these out of the way this afternoon. Richard and I played telephone tag all afternoon here. But one question is, the staff report refers to there are a number of bidders who are bidding on the defeasance process. And I'm wondering, how many bidders, and I mean, it's a numerical process in my own personal business. I've been through a couple of these recently on major financing type transactions, so therefore I'm wondering why or how there are bidders. It's a numerical process essentially, and I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, let me ask our financial advisor to help.
Okay.
Bill?
The refunding bonds will be offered at a sealed bid auction conducted via the internet, and securities underwriting firms will place bids on those bonds, and those bids will entail putting interest rates for each maturity and a total purchase price, which will reflect their underwriting compensation. That's the competitive part that will take place, anticipated date December 6th, and it's a nationwide opportunity. All firms in the United States or even foreign firms that are qualified to purchase and underwrite securities will be able to submit bids. And then we will purchase for the escrow, for the defeasance escrow, state and local government securities issued by the Treasury for this purpose. And they're low coupon Treasury securities that can be purchased for tailor-made purposes such as defeasing municipal bond issues.
Okay, and are we subject to any flukiness, so to speak, in that market? I don't want to get in any way, shape, or form into an Orange County situation of prior years. Just because somebody low bids something to get a bid, I want to make sure that everything that is done is totally on the up and up and legitimate.
It will be on the up and up. We have a requirement for a good faith deposit of 1% of the purchase price. The bidders that bid on these bonds are known to us. We wouldn't accept a bid from a company that wasn't qualified to bid on them. We just reject it out of hand.
Okay, and then a numerical question. Basically, I'm looking at Exhibit A that's before us. The amount of the refunding escrow, as it's called, and first off, I'd like your definition of what that is $8,109,000 and change, and the amount of the current balance on the existing debt is approximately $7,725,000 for a difference of $384,000. Where does that $384,000 go? How do we account for that?
The refunding escrow is an amount sufficient to pay interest on the outstanding bonds until the first call date, which includes the February 1st, 2006 interest payment of approximately $220,000.
Okay.
The August 1st interest payment of a like amount, $220,000. A 2% redemption premium that the old bonds require in order to call them on August 1st, which is 2% of.
Okay.
It's about, I can't remember what the number is. It's
okay.
It's about $150,000, and the outstanding principal balance of the old bonds. When you add all those items up, you come up with your future cash flow. But because you're buying a Treasury portfolio that will pay principal and interest, you can then lower the amount you need at closing because you're going to get some interest on the Treasuries. So you take into consideration the interest earning on the Treasuries you're purchasing and the maturity value of the Treasuries, and that has to be sufficient to pay the amount equal to the 2 periods of interest, the redemption premium, and the outstanding bonds. And it's a mathematical calculation.
Correct.
In order to solve for that. And it turns out that the amount you need is $8,300,000 to pay the amount necessary on August 1st and February.
August 1st of 2006.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So basically, in this defeasance process, we're not actually paying off the old bonds, but we're defeasing them. And then on top of that, there's a 2% premium. Then we're paying, again, payments for August as well as payments for, what did you say, February? February, okay. And all that goes into that number. And then we come out with a whole new set of securities that defease the process, or that are used in the defeasance process that allegedly, according to the market, if those conditions stay the same, will have an interest rate that is effectively lower. Hence, that's where our savings comes in. Is that correct?
That's correct. And,
Okay.
and Exhibit B shows what my estimate of the market was with, I have about 10 basis points perhaps cushion in these numbers. Trying to guess where the market is on the date of the sale, which is December 6th, can be difficult because the market it moves every day. But this is what I thought was a conservative estimate with a little bit of room so that we could all be pleasantly surprised and say, wow, the savings aren't 800,000, they're 950,000. But whatever the savings are, I recommended to staff that the bond sale not be consummated if the savings cannot be at least represented as 3% of the amount of refunding bonds necessary to 3% savings.
Right.
And what we have in Exhibit B down at the very bottom on the right-hand side is 6.34%. If that number can't be 3%, I would recommend that staff not accept any of the bids and simply postpone the sale.
And if we do pull out, the city has lost no more than roughly a couple $1,000s, and that's all.
That's correct. It is a very, very small amount. It would be the amount to publish the notice of sale in the bond buyer, and it would be an amount for a debt statement, which is something we have to purchase whether we do the deal or not. It goes in the official statement, and you have one in your audited financial statements as well.
Okay. I think that I had a number of other questions, and Richard has been able to generally answer those, and I've been able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So,
Just to recap on Councilman Eaton's comment, though, that these defeasance issues, as shown in the agreement, really are predictable U.S. instruments, and the rate that you're projecting, shown on Exhibit B, is relatively conservative relative to the forward market that we're talking about. We're really talking about less than 30 days, actually.
Yeah, I hope so. I want to make a caveat. When Richard started this process, the market was at its nadir. The rates were really low.
Right.
And I was showing savings of close to 10%.
Right.
In the intervening 6 weeks, there's been a lot of erosion. The market's gone up 30 basis points.
Right. Yeah.
So that being said, I don't know where it's going to be. I hope these are conservative.
But I think, based upon the staff report, we're saying here this is a floor, and anything below that floor, you would recommend pulling the item from the market.
The 3% is the floor. These numbers aren't the floor. These numbers are a little bit better than the floor.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to come back then, Richard, with the actual results of this at some point after the first of the year? And so at this point, this is just a resolution allowing you to move forward with this?
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is there any? Are we having public comment, or do you want a motion?
Again, is there anyone from the public that has any comments on this item? Okay. Is there a motion?
I would move adoption of resolution number 2005 -90.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for the refunding, or moving forward with refunding the 96 general obligation bonds. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Councilmember Davids?
Yes.
Mayor Teagle Doherty?
Yes. Okay, next item this evening under new business is item 9B. It's consideration of amending and restating the animal control ordinance. And here to make, again, a brief staff
Brief
report.
statement, yes, Madam
Is
Mayor.
Bob Lansdowne. We do have actually, I thought, a very well-written staff report that clearly outlines the changes that would bring us into consistency with the San Mateo County's ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, I would just indicate that we're required to bring our ordinance into somewhat of compliance with the counties by our contract with Animal Control Services at the present time. And we've done that. There are some exceptions where we kept some rules and regulations that are particular to our city. But all in all, we've adopted the county's ordinance. It's required a major rewrite. Provisions for dangerous animals, vicious animals have been updated, and a hearing process that I think brings a better due process to the system is in the new ordinance. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Bob?
I think there's just a clarification. I noted that one of the provisions is, and at one point in time this would have affected me, it doesn't now, where we had an older dog, and then our son brought home 2 puppies that are now a lot larger than puppies, but they're still puppies. And so at one time we technically had 3 dogs, and then the old dog faded out. as old dogs do sometimes, and so now we have 2 puppies. So, but I think the public needs to know that, as I read this, that there is a maximum of, 2 dogs and 2 cats, and that's all you can have. You can't have 3 or you can't have 4 unless somebody has puppies or something like that. In which case there's a time limit of up to 6 months to get your brood down to the number of 2. And the public needs to know that so that we don't have any trouble in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, it's paragraph 6.04.320, which is the keeping of other animals, and it also prohibits all domestic fowl like chickens and turkeys and ducks, which some people have, I guess, and which are now allowed for up to 4 months in age or longer without a permit. And it also prohibits beekeeping. So we're going to single that out too.
Oh, okay. Other questions for Bob?
Well, I had a question on that because as I read this, chickens aren't allowed. Is that correct?
That's
is a domestic fowl.
It's a domestic fowl. So
only when they're baby chicks.
Okay.
Just like Councilmember Eaton's puppies. I've met those puppies.
Mr. Lanzone has seen my puppies.
And the other question I had also...
Big, strong leash for those puppies.
The following section, 6.04.320, keeping of other animals permitted, the dogs and cats, I understand, other household pets which are not kept outside. And that could be a hamster or a guinea pig.
Birds.
Or a bird. But I don't see anything about rabbits. And I've had over the years, when my kids were young, we had rabbits. They'd come and go, but we had rabbits, and they were, of course, always kept outside. Mm-hmm. How would you read that, Bob? Is rabbits in or out of this deal?
I'd say they're out. If they were going to be kept outside, if for some reason they're kept inside, if you were able to keep them inside, they'd be like hamsters and other forms of other type of indoor pets. And I'd just indicate that this ordinance, the only other city that has presently adopted it is Foster City, but the others are considering it, and this seems to be the direction that all the other cities are moving in. If we want to create an exception, we can do that, but we have to be prepared to enforce that ourselves and not have the Peninsula Humane Society do it. So that would add to our costs if there are any.
Well, and isn't it true that, I look at some of these ordinances, there's the question of what's actually written in the ordinance versus to what extent the city is going to enforce it.
Correct.
And I know from past policy, the city's, the policy has been that they enforce on the receipt of a complaint. And so 1 or 2 rabbits in the backyard may not be a problem and may not generate a complaint, which would then require the ordinance. However, if someone has rabbits throughout their backyard that are digging under the fence and going into neighbors' yards, I think the city is probably going to get involved in at that point. It may be appropriate to have an ordinance like this in place that allows the city some ability to have an enforcement action.
I'd also indicate that 604.160, which talks about modification of permit, does allow the police department, which is our enforcing authority within the city, to issue an exception if one might be warranted, as long as it complies with health and safety. So if somebody has something out of the ordinary, for example, you mentioned a dog or some situation with dogs or cats, or maybe it might be bees or something else where they needed to have or wanted to have those pets or animals, they could apply to the police department for an exception.
Okay.
So there's a process there to handle it.
Don, another question?
One thing, or 2 things. Number one, tell us, Mr. Lanzone, how this would relate to any animals that might be considered pets,
Sure.
but that also might be considered like a 4-H project, the Eaton Hills 4-H Club, or anything like that.
The 4-H project is on a special permit with the city. We actually even have a lease for the property, so that's an exception to this ordinance.
I remember when we considered a former version of this ordinance, there were certain people who came up who were citizens who out of their home ran animal rescue operations, and therefore they had more than 2 dogs, for example. And they picked a certain breed, or however that ended up working for them. Would those animal rescue operations, with the passage of this updating of ordinance, be out of business?
I think they're out of business. I think they simply have to have that exception from the police
they get a
department.
permit.
Or if they have
Yeah.
an exceptional
Correct.
permit, then, okay.
Get a licensing permit to be an animal rescue.
Okay, if there's no more comments from council, I do see a member of the public that would like to address the council. Do you want to come up and state your name and, again, city of residence? And if there's others that wish to address the council, please feel free to let me know. Go ahead.
My name is Thomas Vance. I live at 425 Palomar Drive in Redwood City, outside the city limits of Redwood City. We have been asked to be annexed into San Carlos on occasion, and, well, we don't really want it, but I don't want to be annexed into a city that prohibits beekeeping, which is my hobby.
Quick question for you. Would it be that you'd be willing to apply to the police department for an exception to this? If
I'd
you
be
were,
willing to apply, yes. I just
So,
want to know ahead of time, though, that you're not putting an all-out ban on beekeeping before I would vote to be part of San Carlos.
Well,
And next of all, I have given all the cities in San Mateo County, except Foster City, free charge to pick up swarms of bees. The only reason I won't go to Foster City is because they have an all-out ban on beekeeping.
well, my understanding from our city attorney is that beekeeping is not, it would be permitted. However, it would require a permit for our police department in order to do that under this current ordinance, should you decide at some point in the future to annex to the city of San Carlos.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, it seems to me, and I would only take a guess, that Mr. Vance's location is in a more rural or semi-rural location. It's not in what you and I would consider a, house after house after house right next to each other neighborhood.
Right, we have a
more
vacant
urban
lot on our
neighborhood, even in
side.
our suburban neighborhoods here. And you're a little more out in the country, so to speak, and
True.
presuming that doesn't change a whole lot, that would be your justification for getting us a permit anyway. and
Well, I
that ought to
guess what
probably
I
work fine.
also want to state is I want to go back to my beekeeping club and suggest that they not help cities that have an ordinance that makes it too hard for them to take place in their hobby.
Okay, so do you still have questions about this particular ordinance?
Well, I don't know how restricting it is. I don't know.
Well, again, it would require you to apply to the police department, should you be in the city of San Carlos, in order to continue that hobby. And I can't imagine why the city or the police department would say no, but if it's a fairly safe hobby and it's not endangering any lives or public or safety, I would imagine that it would be something that would be permitted. Just like, if someone has like more than just the 2 dogs and the 2 cats, maybe 3 cats, that they should theoretically, under the rules of this ordinance, go down to the police department and apply for a permit to be able to do that.
And on at least one occasion, I have had an aggressive beehive. There are 2 different ways to deal with it. One is to requeen it. The other is to put something that moves in front of it that gets it used to seeing movement, so it doesn't, like a flag or something, so that when it blows in the wind, they get used to it and don't approach every moving object as an enemy.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for beekeeping. You certainly
Right.
seem to know what you're
I
talking
can
about.
show it to you in a book if you'd like. The one by A.B. is the,
I certainly believe you.
and the one by Carrier has How to Requeen a Mean Hive.
Yes. So the item before us tonight is actually is amendment of an existing ordinance that we do have that would bring us into more consistency with what the county is recommending or has adopted, and. I feel that this does have some latitude and some flexibility in recognizing that there are always external or outside cases that may need to be looked at on a one-to-one basis. And I'm certain you would probably be looking into that before you would annex to the city.
Madam Mayor,
Right.
just to assuage some of Mr. Vance's concerns, on all past annexations, there are a lot of other things besides beekeeping that don't really fit. And we have been, as a city, reasonable in taking those that time frame to make this reasonable transition into the city. So your approach was, if they were to annex, you would vote against it if we were not to be amenable to your beekeeping. All I can say is we got apples and oranges here. If you want to annex, that's your baby. You got to agree to what we have on the books. But I think in the past, our history has been one of reasonableness to allow you time and a framework to apply for whatever the variance is. In your case, it's bees, but there are other things that are probably far more problematic in terms of people from the Palomar Park. Because several years ago, a group of your folks were here under that same issue, and they had many other concerns.
Oh, right. We don't want street lights. We don't want.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it makes the bees look like,
right.
Snow White there.
Some of them do have chickens too, I think.
So
I'm just saying, if I end up annexed into San Carlos, suddenly I'm under new restrictions.
I think our answer is, I think we would be reasonable, but you need to understand that this is an ordinance that really is adopted countywide. So with the exception of Foster City, I think all the cities have virtually the same requirements. So I think, and I also think they're probably quite reasonable. So I don't know if we can answer you. We would be reasonable if you come to annex, but you got to make that choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did you have any other questions?
No, but I will go back to the beekeeping club and let them know that I hope something will come positive of it.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public that wish to address the council on this consideration of amending and restating the animal control ordinance? Name and address, or actually name and city of residence for the record,
Mark
please.
Hopkins, 1030 Elm Street, San Carlos. Just want to speak for the chickens. I have chickens at my house on Country Road down there on Elm Street. Just want to make sure I understand that you can continue to keep them as long as you get an exception with the police department.
That's my understanding. I'm seeing the city attorney nodding his head over there.
Is that a yes?
That is a yes.
That's correct. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Last call. Anyone else? Is there a motion this evening?
Move to close the public hearing?
It's not a public hearing. It's just new business.
Okay.
Although it's an introduction of an ordinance, so.
Well, then I would move to introduce ordinance number 1365, an ordinance of the City of San Carlos repealing Chapter 6.04 Animal Control and adding a new chapter of 6.04 of the San Carlos Municipal Code. Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Davids over here, quietly. Christine, would you, there's no discussion, right? No? Okay. Christine?
Councilmember King?
Yes.
Councilmember Davids?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton?
Yes.
Mayor Teagle Doherty?
Yes. Okay, the last item on our agenda this evening is public comment. This is the second public comment period that we have. And again, it is for speakers that wish to address the council on an item not on the posted agenda. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to address the council at this time? I'm not seeing anybody jump up. We're adjourned. Thank you very much. And remember, November 28th, new council up here.